One of the interesting things that's been happening, and that's tied also to design thinking and human design, is who is actually a designer. I studied engineering design originally, engineering design and appropriate technology. I didn't go to art school. I'm an academic who specialises in research about design. So one of the weaknesses of design is to sometimes think that only people who have been to particular kinds of higher education institution or who have got using particular methods and tools, that only they are the designers. When actually, if you use another lens and see that the designing of organisations, of policies, of infrastructures is done by many, many people and increasingly done by automated technologies. So there's a broader issue which is not about designers, it is about designing. And so one of the weaknesses of professional designers is sometimes to think that they are the only ones equipped to do designing, when actually it is already happening. And the question is where to bring some specific skills and methods and identify particularly opportunities for doing things differently inside the designing that is already being carried out. So there's two interesting tensions. One is consumerization, right? We got used to having, those of us with smartphones, to having instant access to bank accounts, to services, to buying things, and we're used to, as customers, having things quickly, at our fingertips, easy to use. But when we interact with government, we may not have those things available to us. So one of the drivers or the pressures that leads to design emerging inside government is this consumerization tied to increased datafication and digitalization. But alongside this, there's another pressure which you could call democratization, that because we have these digital devices, because our voices are not being heard as citizens, people want opportunities to interact with government more than voting once every 4 or 5 years. So that's another pressure that's leading to some of the adoption of design in government. One of the things that civil servants I have been working with in the UK talk about is that the right problems are fixed. So instead of the framing of a problem that is in the public administration with the limited information they have, if you directly connect with people's lived experience and their understandings and their worlds, you get a better insight to what the problem actually might be and the cultural and social aspects of it, not just in a technical or procedural lens. So one of the benefits is also solving the right kind of problem. What we've seen over the last 2 decades is design practices, human-centered design, design thinking, service design, increasingly playing roles in organizations of different kinds. The commercial sector, but then increasingly in public administrations and public policy contexts. So there's a number of very prominent examples, one of which was Policy Lab, initiated in the UK government, the civil service, in 2014, that I had the privilege of working with in that first year or so, to help policymakers with a particular challenge. It might be the research side, to understand people's lived experience and bring that lived experience into the research towards to shape policy development. It might be co-creation and development of policy proposals. It might be early stage prototyping and testing in context of policy proposals to help them make sense of all these emerging practices and principles and capabilities that have been developed over the last 10 to 15 years. But now in the UK government, for example, there are many, many examples of design or design-like teams, both thinking about the design of public services, but also the design of policies. So there's a growing intersection between design practices and research into these matters and the kinds of challenges that public policy and public administration organisations are facing in a changing landscape. There's some quite clear benefits from bringing design capabilities into public administrations. So this focus on paying attention to people's lived experience, paying attention to people's relationships with public bodies, whether service providers or government itself or democratic institutions. Treating people as people who have complex lives and feelings and desires and needs and hopes and fears. That's one important benefit. The second is co-creation, so bringing practical methods and tools for working with people in rooms, online, on street corners, to bring their hopes and aspirations and their lived experience, their understandings to generating ideas and possibly trying them out. A third clear benefit from design is what designers call prototyping, trying things out, possibly at small scale. Government already often tries things out, but it might be one pilot in 3 different regions, and then the decisions have basically already been made to go ahead. Prototyping in design takes many, many forms. It could take half an hour, it could take 3 days. So the scope and the scale of it, the level of activity involved is often quite varied and open, but with this principle of let's take this idea and try it out in relation to people, their behaviours, the situation, and so on. So that focus on practical experimentation, relentlessly, not just doing it once or twice, is something that design brings. And that's often a challenge for public administrations who may feel safe in their buildings away from people and the impacts of the decisions they make. There's already, for the last 20 or 30 years, been extensive efforts to try and change how public administrations work, finding new methodologies, turning more to the outside, recognizing the turbulence and change in the landscape in which policymakers operate. So in that landscape, design is bringing in new ways of working which don't sit easily sometimes with the way public administrations work. The kinds of skills and capabilities that are built into those organizations. This leads to frictions. One of the frictions that might emerge from bringing a design capability into government is that it might appear to slow things down because you spend time trying to understand people's experiences on the ground, the current service or lack of service, the current policy, and what's going on. All of that takes time. So it might look that using a design approach takes time. But the benefits that come from that are having an understanding of the problem on the ground, a deeper understanding that looks at things holistically, that connects people's lived experiences with the current ways things are done or not done or could be done. A second barrier or challenge is the challenges in collaboration across different teams, different functions, different kinds of specialism, and the different worldviews, and sometimes the different values that comes from people's lived experience. So there are challenges about what counts as knowledge, whose knowledge is it, where's the knowledge come from. So that can present a friction in public organisations. To meaningfully and coherently build and strengthen design capabilities in government, there's a set of relatively clear things to be done. So it's building the capability that includes job families and job characteristics and learning and development that's ongoing, having a mindset to recognise that excellence is not necessarily in the team, but look broadly, learn from international and local government peers and indeed from business. Recognizing that designers are not the only people who can do design-like work, and then building and supporting the leaders of these design teams and functions so they can learn together as a cohort. So none of these things are particularly new or original, but it's actually having a holistic view of all the different elements of a system to build up a public design capability. We're having this conversation at a very interesting time, 2025. There's the very complex geopolitics, the climate and environmental crisis, the other multiple crises that are connected to that, such as global migration flows. So there's a sort of urgency for change, and at the same time, who has the legitimacy to lead change? It's not clear that politicians are equipped for leading change. And there is a lot of potential in the existing organisations to address some of these challenges and work differently. But one of the other changing factors at the moment is technology. There's extensive pressures from capital to develop and further invest in automation and AI in government. And so there's a huge amount of uncertainty at the moment. So that also leads questions about what does that mean for design as a competence, as a set of capabilities. It may be that AI, for example, can significantly help with drawing together and synthesizing multiple complex patterns about people's behavior and problems in a system to allow rapidly identifying problems. It may be that technology can generate multiple solutions and do testing. However, what AI probably won't be able to do is help humans make sense of things which are political and contested. So one of the shifts we might see is less work from designers doing research on user experience, summarizing user experience. Maybe there will be more automation under the guidance of humans to do that kind of work. I would say what is useful to keep an eye on is to make sure that you have close cooperation with academics, including design academics, but including academics who already specialize in public administration, policy studies, and those who focus on innovation. We all are operating in this landscape of significant change, significant uncertainty, and drivers to change often coming from capital being invested in AI and technology. So asking critical questions, drawing on knowledge from several disciplines, not just design, close collaboration with academia, and also working with young people, with citizens who are the future voters, the future citizens who may not be voters and may not feel that they trust government. So engaging with them early on has, I think, a lot of potential to go beyond the existing people who are involved, to look at the people who are not involved and the future generation. One question that I try and pay attention to, and I think in different ways we could all pay more attention to, is who do we hold ourselves accountable to? Do we hold ourselves accountable just to our boss, our colleagues, the people we work with who pay our salaries? Do we hold ourselves accountable to our children, or if we don't have children, other people's children and future generations? Do we hold ourselves accountable to the people who we will never meet, who live the other side of the world experiencing incredible poverty and significant negative climate change? How do we render those accountabilities in our day-to-day life? And how does that shape the choices that we are able to make?